Welcome to Globewatch with me, Charles Ebune. Illicit financial flows cost developing countries 947 billion CFA francs 3 years ago, and at least $1.5 trillion left Africa between 1980 and 2008, according to Financial Integrity, a Washington-based non-governmental organization. One scientific report has proven that of many problems affecting developing nations is that of illicit financial flows, which has a huge impact on developing countries across the world. So, who and what can save the world in general and Africa in particular from illicit financial flows? My guest today has been working on that question over the years. Barrister Akere Muna, welcome to Globewatch.
Well, thank you for having me.
Your various job descriptions prerogatives have given you the unique chance of meeting so many African leaders, be it presidents and those of the private sector, through corruption elimination. Has any African president given you concrete words and actions of eliminating illicit financial flows through the fight against corruption?
Well, I would say that corruption is something in which most leaders I've met are very engaged in. I think the most decisive discussion I had with the president of Rwanda, President Kagame, and he told me, listen, Mr. Muna, I cannot tell you that there will not be corruption in Rwanda. But he said that what we can ensure in Rwanda is that there is zero tolerance. That if you're unlucky to be caught, you're dealt with. And I dare say that one has to mention our own country, because I don't know any other African country in which you have so many politicians who have been being tried or awaiting trial on the grounds of corruption. So I think there's the conscience level is very high on the problem of corruption and what one to do about it. But I think there's still a huge gap between the discourse and action that has to be taken. That we have to deal with. Now, to come to your question of illicit financial flows, it is a disastrous thing because of the effect it has on our economy. In terms of the balance of payments between development aid and financial flows, Africa is a net creditor. So if you just capture all the money which goes out illegally, you would have amount of money we get from foreign aid, and with a lot left over. So you see, it is something that you'll be able to harness, and that is the problem that caused the Conference of Ministers of the African Union, guided also by the Economic Commission for Africa, to create this high-level panel on illicit financial flows, which is headed by President Becky.
We'll be coming to its details in a moment. You cited Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda, with a very firm determination to create a real no tolerance to corruption. About $1 billion billion have left East Africa over the years due to illicit financial flow, and Rwanda itself accounts for $158 million. Probably even Paul Kagame finds it so difficult to deal with it.
Well, listen, you shouldn't confuse illicit financial flows and corruption.
I'm interested in illicit financial flows.
Okay, now, illicit financial flows, the proportion of corruption in illicit financial flows is like 5%, 3 to 5%. These are the figures from Global
Financial Integrity.
Exactly. The head of which is Raymond Baker, a good friend of mine.
Okay.
So it's 3 to 5%. But what you're talking about, illicit financial flows, is recorded, i.e. exports that are underpriced, imports that are overpriced, what they call as transfer pricing, export of capital, smuggling, undeclared profits, tax evasion,
Kickbacks.
kickback, that's corruption. So that again accounts for a little bit. Just a small margin, 5%.
Okay.
But I have to nuance that statement by saying that you can bribe a banker 100,000 CFA to export 100 million. So the illicit financial flow is 100 million you have exported. But you can see that the proportion of money that actually changes hands as corruption is small. So when I say it's 3 to 5%, true it is, but corruption is all pervading, is the driver in the whole process. So I think illicit financial flows is totally different. In the cocoa trade here, we have a clear example in Cameroon. Now the general manager of ONCPB, I hear, not ONCPB, ONCC now, I hear complain that in one area, the amount of cocoa exported dropped by almost 50%. That's huge. But the people there are not complaining. But when I had read it over, I discovered that I tried to talk to him, ask him, but do you see the bill of lading, that is the ship bill that leave the country? He said, no. I said, there you are. It is obvious that people are shipping cocoa and coffee lower than what they're declaring, so they pay lower, they have to pay some money to the ONCC and to other bodies have to do with cocoa. So they pay a lower price. So the way you want to stop illicit financial flow there is to make sure that the person who ships the cocoa brings the shipped bill back. So he is able to ship more cocoa and declare less gains, but he's getting more. That's an illicit financial flow.
Okay.
Or a company that creates a company in one country and one other one in another country. The goods go to the country in one country, overprices it and sends it here, and they export. So these are illicit financial flows.
Let me just read to you what somebody has said. Writing for African Business Magazine, an article titled Multinationals Steal 50 Billion Outlines. And I quote, while the outside world has always been very quick to pin the corruption label on Africa, we have always argued that it takes two to make this deadly dance work. Now, it is obvious that powerful multinationals are as complicit, in fact, more so in sucking Africa's lifeblood as the worst local despot. Who should take responsibility for this trade?
Well, I think responsibility is divided, but there is no doubt in my mind that those who are the most powerful are those who bear the most blame. Those who have the banks, those who rule the currency, those who set the economic agenda, are those who take the blame. Let me give you an easy example. Look at the area of repatriation of assets. Look at the freezing of accounts. If a despot, as your document says, goes to an account in Switzerland or Liechtenstein or Cayman Islands
or Monaco,
or Monaco, and puts $50 million, and that bank takes it. After this despot is being tried, that money is frozen. And for the time that it's frozen, the money is there with that bank. They benefit from it. And these banks are in our countries in Africa every day looking for this kind of unhealthy money, because they know that when these guys will be caught, they will freeze the money, they will keep it. So they create the market where this money can go to.
Do you discourage Africans from opening bank accounts in the Western world and keep that money in the local banks? Even if they are caught, the money will circulate.
Well, listen, I think people should keep money where they want to keep their money. It's not for us, you and I, to say. But I'm saying that people who steal money should not be allowed to keep it anywhere. In their mattress, in their cupboards, in locally or abroad. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm saying that when somebody steals money, he is as culpable as the person who keeps it. And I'm saying that the banks abroad that keep this money, I'm now coming to what the quote you have. The banks abroad that keep this money are handlers of stolen goods. They're as culpable as those who put it there. But when you hear the speech, they're talking about those who have put money. They'll talk about the Mobutus, the baby dog who just died, and all these people. But nobody will talk about the banks. Can you name the banks where this money is out? Of course, you hesitatingly. Banks in Belgium were caught with trying to entice poor people to put money in their banks. Switzerland is trying to clean up its act. So it is a serious issue. Okay. And the most powerful, of course, protect themselves. Okay. And this story has been recalled to the power that be for a long time. It's just now that The West is cash strapped.
Okay.
They need the money that they suddenly say, we think that we have to control illicit financial
Sure.
flows.
Let us have some background material, Barrister Akere. The African Development Bank identifies kickbacks, corruption, criminal activities, and tax evasion as key trademarks of illicit financial flows. You are an exceptional legal mind in Africa. Permit me use that expression.
I'm flattered.
Is their definition legally flawed or lacking?
Where their definition is more definition of identification, so you can't argue with that. They are saying that this is where it comes from. So they're identifying the source as opposed to defining it. Because in this case, the phenomenon happens and you classify it. So what they have done is they identify different sources of illicit financial flows. And I think it's very fair. And the African Development Bank has done a lot of work in terms of illicit financial flows.
Let us get to impact before we look the way forward on how to handle all of this. Just listen to what the Director General for the Security and Exchange Commission of Nigeria, Ms. Aruna Ote, uttered recently. Nigeria has lost more to illicit financial flows between 2000 and 2011, more than any African country. We are listed as one of the top 10 globally in this ranking. Some people estimate that we need about $50 billion to ensure stable electricity, yet within a 9-year period, we lost $140 billion to illicit financial flows. Can there be a legally binding continental framework to deal with this issue successfully?
Well, we already have the African Union Convention on combating and fighting corruption. We have that. We have the UNCAC, which is the UN Convention. And I think it gives you the framework. I think beyond framework is political will. See, those who lead should exhibit and show the will to give traction.
How do you punish those who lead when a majority of this money and these practices are being undertaken by them? Because I know that you work with President Thabo Mbeki, who is heading the high-level panel of the African Union Economic Commission for Africa report. Is it easy to talk to these guys? Is it easy to punish them? Some of them are president, ministers, prime ministers, director generals, still in office.
Well, I think that, if I could use my my experience from Transparency International, where I've been for the past, 14, 15 years,
Sure.
and 9 of which I was vice chair. We have a campaign known as No Impunity Campaign. And that is it, is to name and shame. TI France has started proceedings against some leaders. I think that there are small steps.
Who are some of those leaders? Is it possible to have them, or is it still a secret?
Well, I would advise you to go and look at TI France head side. The case is going as a public matter. Some African leaders have been taken to court by TI France to try and recover some assets. Those cases are well known. But I'm saying that we are getting to a point where it'll be hard to hide. And as the American judge says, sunlight is the best disinfectant. So I think, sincerely, I think that it's going to get harder. Today we are talking about illicit financial flows. If you talked about it to an American 5 years ago or a Swiss, they'll look at you and laugh. Today we're talking about corruption. 10 years ago, the World Bank would talk about corruption. Today it has what is known as the STAR Initiative, Stolen Assets Recovery Initiative. The times are changing, and those who don't want to change with it, well, tough luck.
Okay. Just listen to President Thabo Mbeki. I have visited many African countries to see how this is being handled. Some of them already have institutions in place to tackle this. However, they are not doing a great job. There is no cooperation. This is why we are interacting with the US, the IMF, and other organizations to see what they can do and what they're already doing to solve this problem. You work with Thabo Mbeki.
Travel with him as well.
Can we have inside information on the level of cooperation? Because probably this is where there is too much gap.
The gap is one of cooperation. The gap is that you're asking countries to go against huge multinationals, companies that bring them a heavy amount of revenue. I mean, to do a symmetrical approach, I would say what you're asking foreign countries to do to their companies is what you're asking Africans to do to their leaders. See, these are influential entities within those countries, and it's difficult to deal with them. But it's becoming easier and easier as you know, as the public gets aware. So I think your program and many things that get people aware of the consequences and what it's all about raises the awareness of the citizens, and the citizens can demand. They can look at, with scorn with somebody who's involved in this. They can name and shame.
Let me give you an example. Let's take a corporation, let's say like Credit Lyonnais. I'm not indicting Credit Lyonnais. Let's take PNB Paribas, Coca-Cola, and many other companies. What will happen to an African country that decides to punish them when they do illicit financial flows?
Well, is the influence. I mean, it just influenced the financial world. I mean, Coca-Cola company is not anonymous. It has shareholders. It has influential people. PNB Paribas, you know, was just fined in France, in the US. Guess who asked for leniency? The president of France made a dramatic statement asking for the Americans to look at it, and the Americans were scandalized. And the Americans were like scandalized. How can you be asking Obama to get involved in a legal case? So you see, it shows that, you know, behind these great companies, they are powerful people, and it is not easy to deal with. I mean, in our own country, it's the same thing. You know, I suppose the more powerful you are, you know.
One survey suggests that 47% of illicit financial flows benefits go to Chinese companies in Africa. The Chinese constructed entirely and handed as a gift the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa. Is it possible for Africa to bite the finger that feeds her?
Well, you know, the thing about Chinese cooperation is difficult to tackle. And I have a bias for the Chinese with the function. It is true that it's just now they're upping the ante against in
It
corruption.
is an independent bias, right?
Yeah, it is an independent bias. And they're now upping the ante in the fight against corruption. But do something that is tremendous. They engage a lot in infrastructure, which is an area that was abandoned. I'll tell you a story, 1 minute, quick story. The late king of Jordan was approached by his court of wise men. They say, Your Majesty, the Americans are buying up everything. They're building here and everywhere they're building. We think that it's dangerous for our country to have this happening. The king listened and said, No, wise men, thank you for your advice. You just go out and keep on watching. When you see the Americans carrying these buildings to go back to America, you can come and tell me. Something like that. It tells you that, well, what the Chinese do, if you go to the AU, it's an amazing building. I would have wanted that African states make the sacrifice to put something up like that, but they didn't. It's a pride, it's an amazing building. Why didn't we have something like that? So I think it is important that the cooperation within China is nurtured, but that it has to be sanitized, I think.
You have worked for so long with Transparency International.
That's correct.
And one of your mission was, okay, no corruption in the world. During the period you worked with Transparency International, how much success did you register in this domain?
Well, I would take myself as an example. It's easier to deal with. When I started the first chapter of TI in Cameroon, I was like a plague.
A pestilence. A disease.
A disease. I lost clients. Some government companies, they won't deal with me.
Yeah, because you are a lawyer and you need to defend people.
So they said, how on earth am I against the government? Or am I fighting against corruption? And some foreign companies, when they came to do business with the government told them, if your lawyer is Barrister Muna, we can't deal with you. And we lost 80% of our business. We went down, we were harassed by other people, we were threatened, and we called opposition, I don't know what that meant. And we kept at it. The language, we gave a chapter, then I got elected to the board, then from the board I got to vice chair, and I went to the African Union, I worked on the African Union Convention, and the language, and I'm amazed when I sit down today. As a matter of fact, the first group that was created in the Prime Minister's office was called the Committee Ad Hoc to Read Conduct Corruption. Committee Ad Hoc. So I asked somebody, so why do you call this a Committee Ad Hoc? It's not even created by any law. It's just a secular. It's corruption is a passive phenomenon, it will pass, so we just have to have a committee ad hoc. Now what do we have in the country? We have a whole organization, an institution, anchored in the law. So the awareness, I mean, CRTV couldn't talk about this. Now you can talk about it. You couldn't talk about this before. Nobody could talk about it. As a matter of fact, I remember being
We are all evolving.
Exactly, everybody's evolving and moving. And I think that those who want to be left behind, well, tough luck. I mean, who would have believed that in the country you have prime ministers, chief of staff in the president's office, people at that level in jail? Who would have thought?
But probably you should be regretting because you just admitted that you had huge clients' departure. The government considered you at one moment and many others as opposition. As a barrister, what do you consider most in life? Is it a society of values or a society of personal interest? Because you lost clients who were supposed to give you a lot of money.
Yeah, but those clients went away because they thought that I had no business fighting against corruption.
Have they come back?
Some have.
Why?
You should ask them.
Across many African countries, just like in Europe, there are huge government agencies and non-governmental organizations to deal with the corruption battle. Everybody agrees that it is a menace to development and even security. You know today of financial terrorism. It's simply because people had taken money, they don't know what to do with the money, and at the end of the day, for them to come to power, they need to pass through certain groups for them to succeed. What should governments across the world today be doing to handle the issue of financial terrorism, because it emanates from illegal cash movement?
That's a tough question for the simple reason that we promote democracy. We talk about democracy. But unfortunately, one of the principal fuels of democracy is money. Look at France. All the stories about the former presidents and future presidents hovers around the gathering of money for elections. Look at the expenditure in the United States. Just look at even your own country, how much money is spent. So as we push democracy and the need for financing it increases, people will always get creative. And the creative way is what? Is through corruption, is through power peddling, is through lobbying. So it is one hell of a conundrum. But I think what can be done is to strengthen the civil service, because the civil service deals with the poorest of the poor. They deal with the powerless. And one of your colleagues asked me the question. I said, well, there are three areas I think that a government should concentrate on. It's almost biblical: justice, health, and education. Because it deals with the poorest of the poor, the most powerless. That's where they have their salvation. You know, to school, to court, or to the hospital. These are the basics. And if you can sanitize those, and I heard the Pope, the current Pope, in a speech in Brazil, he says that the only way you can judge a country is by the way it treats its poorest. And to me, that's what the fight against corruption is about, is to ensure that the poorest have a fair shake. The way it looks is difficult. It's still the most powerful. It's still those who can pick up a phone and get somebody to start running. It's those who not go to court but win a case without having anybody there. I mean, it is unfortunate, but that's what it's all about.
What actually is the high-level panel doing today alongside the Africa peer review mechanism to have a broader approach to this issue?
Well, listen, I just ended my tenure about 6 months ago as chair of the African peer review mechanism. And we have a system of evaluation which evaluates corporate, social, economic governance, and political governance. And through that, across the board, you can really stimulate the country's propensity to sanitize its own system. So it's a good thing, the APRM, which is being relaunched thanks to the Liberian president, whom I've met a couple of times, Madam Sirleaf. Okay, and the illicit financial fraud, we are only asked to do a report. We are doing a diagnosis, and we are making recommendations, and we shall present them to the African Union in January. I just returned from the United Nations, where I was asked to make a speech because Thabo Mbeki couldn't go. He asked me to sit in for him to speak on this phenomenon, and that is it. And in January, we shall have our full recommendations out, and we shall diagnose the problem. And most of it is in your brilliant introduction. It is crazy for a continent like ours, which is so poor and so needy, to allow so much money to go out and be kept by those who have so much and are so wealthy.
Finally, throughout this interview, you have shown an unquenchable determination to stamp out corruption from...
To fight against that very...
Fight against corruption. You know, and you are aware of the New York financial regulator, Benjamin Lawsky, who has made everyone to understand that financial nonsense cannot be accepted in the United States of America. Do you want to become the Benjamin Lawsky of Africa?
I don't want to become anybody. Yeah? I want to become a Cameroonian who inspires Cameroonian people. The American angle has a problem because they have targets. They need to raise funds for the country. So really, you know, I want to be able to talk with you, talk with the guy next door, talk with the policeman, and say, well, you know what? When you don't check a guy's vehicle, he takes 18 people, he has an accident, people die. So corruption kills. So people should understand. I think people understand that corruption is about you and I. It's about our lives. It's about going together. It's the fact that the guy who collects the toll gate doesn't pay, the road doesn't get maintained. I mean, it is something that concerns everybody. And I would be glad if the same Benjamin Lawsky said that money stolen from Nigeria should be sent back yesterday, or money stolen from Cameroon should be sent back. But the thing is that the money stays there. Abacha money is just being collected to send back now, 10 years after. Marcos's money took 15 years. It is crazy. They know the money is stolen. They have it in their country. They use it. They have the interest. When they return it, they don't even return interest. So I think there's some hypocrisy about it. Now they need the cash.
They didn't take the money there.
But they received it.
They were clients.
Where you're asking me, I'm a lawyer. In law, the handler and the thief are punished the same way. In England, this handler is even punished more severely than the thief. So I think if these guys in this country doesn't have banks who took their money, they will be forced to put it in mattresses, and you and I will see one day when it gets too big.
Barrister Akere Muna, thanks very much for accepting.
Thank you for having me, and I wish you all the best. And I really have to congratulate you on the interest you have on such an issue, which looks complex, but it's basic, because it concerns your life, my life, and that of the guy in the village.
You're welcome.